At sunrise, the plantation looked normal. The fields stretched endlessly. The cabins stood silent. Chains rested where they always had. But by the time the sun climbed one hand higher into the sky, 250 enslaved people were gone. No screams, no gunshots, no chase in the dirt. Just absence. An entire plantation emptied in 1 hour, and no one saw it coming. This is not a story of chaos. This is not a story of rebellion with fire and blood. This is the story of discipline, patience, and a decision whispered for years. This is the story of the hour freedom was chosen. For the outside world, the plantation was profitable. For those trapped inside it, time did not move. Days blurred together under the same sun, the same work, the same punishments, the same sound of chains being adjusted, not removed. Children learned silence before they learned speech. Women learned how to hide grief behind routine. Men learned to stand still even when their backs burned. And yet, something dangerous was growing beneath the surface. Not anger, coordination. Freedom does not begin with running. It begins with watching. Who changes shifts and when? Which overseer drinks too much? Which path floods after rain? Which dogs tire first? Every detail mattered, and no one spoke of it openly, because survival depended on pretending nothing was happening at all. What the plantation owners never understood was this: they controlled bodies, not minds. Meetings happened during prayer. Routes were memorized through work songs. Messages were hidden in rhythm, tone, pauses. A hymn sung too slowly meant wait. A verse repeated twice meant danger. A child tying cloth a certain way meant tonight. No paper, no maps, no written proof. Because written things could be found, memory could not. Elders taught directions by stars. Women memorized herbal mixtures, some for healing, some for silence. Teenagers practiced walking barefoot over thorns without sound. Everyone had a role, even the children. Especially the children. The decision to leave did not come suddenly. It came after something broke. Maybe a beating that went too far. Maybe a child sold away. Maybe the realization that waiting meant dying slowly. Whatever the spark was, once the decision was made, it was never debated again, because hesitation was deadlier than chains. They chose a morning when the fog was thick, a day when the river ran high, a shift change known only to those who had counted it for months. The signal would not be shouted, it would be felt. When the moment arrived, no one would ask questions, no one would hesitate. You either walked or you were left behind. The sun rose like it always had. Birds sang, fields waited. Overseers assumed obedience. They did not notice the silence was different. Cabin doors opened, not all at once, but naturally. Small groups moved separately. No rush, no panic. A woman adjusted a child on her hip. An old man leaned on a stick, appearing weak. Young men carried tools they would soon discard. Every movement looked ordinary. That was the brilliance of it. By the time suspicion stirred, the plantation was already emptying itself. Within 60 minutes, footprints were swallowed by swamp water. Paths dissolved into tall grass. Groups split and vanished like smoke. Some moved through rivers to erase scent. Some crawled through mud to avoid dogs. Some carried infants drugged gently with plants learned from Africa, from survival, from necessity. No one screamed. Fear was controlled, because panic would kill everyone. This was not escape. This was execution of a plan perfected in silence. When the overseers finally counted, they counted twice, then again, then ran. By the time riders were sent out, there was nothing to chase. No direction, no trail, no mistakes. 250 people had walked away from bondage as if the plantation had exhaled and never breathed them back in. But here is what history almost never tells you. They did not scatter forever. They were going somewhere, and what they built there terrified slave owners more than rebellion ever could. When the plantation woke up to emptiness, panic spread faster than fire. But by then, the escaped were already far beyond pursuit. Because freedom is not won by speed alone. It is won by knowing where no one wants to follow. And that is where they were going. The first night after escape is where most attempts failed. Not because hunters, but because of fear. People whisper too loudly, children cry, someone panics. But this group had prepared for something far harder than chains. Silence in terror. They did not light fires. They did not group together. They slept in turns, standing, kneeling, hidden in reeds and tree hollows. Rain soaked them. Mosquitoes fed freely. No one complained, because pain was familiar. Freedom was not. They moved into land the world called useless, swamps that swallowed horses, forests so thick sunlight barely touched the ground that could not be farmed easily, which is exactly why they chose it. Slave patrols relied on roads, dogs relied on scent, riders relied on speed. This land destroyed all three. Some routes were so narrow people walked single file for hours. Some crossings required moving underwater, breathing through reeds. One wrong step meant drowning, but drowning was quieter than capture, and everyone understood the cost. For weeks they remained scattered, groups of 5, groups of 10, never large enough to be seen. Then, one by one, they arrived. At a clearing hidden so well it looked accidental, a place chosen long before the escape. When the last group arrived, there was no cheering, no celebration, just people sitting down for the first time in their lives, without permission. Some cried, some laughed, some stared at the sky like it was unfamiliar, because it was the first sky they had ever seen as free people. They did not build houses first. They built rules. No shouting, no fires at night. No one leaves alone. Everyone works, everyone eats. Leadership was not forced, it was recognized. The woman who knew plants became the healer. The man who read stars became the guide. Those who remembered Africa remembered governance. Homes came later, from mud, from salvaged wood, from patience. Crops were planted in hidden patterns. Paths were erased as soon as they were made. This was not a camp. It was becoming something else, something permanent. Freedom does not go unnoticed forever. Slave catchers came close. Dogs sniffed the edges of the swamp. Shots were fired into trees, warnings, not discoveries. The town disappeared. People sank into water, covered shelters with leaves, extinguished every trace of human presence. When the hunters arrived, there was nothing. No smoke, no sound, no proof. The patrol left convinced the rumors were lies, but they were wrong. The town still breathed. Children were born free. Think about that. The first child born there never learned chains, never learned permission, never learned ownership. They learned hunting, they learned farming, they learned defense. They learned that freedom was fragile, but real. This terrified slaveholders more than violence ever could, because it proved something dangerous. Slavery could be escaped and survived. But history does not like proof, and power does not forgive defiance. As years passed, the outside world moved closer. Maps expanded, settlers pushed inward, rumors reached the wrong ears, and the free town faced a final question: disappear again or fight to exist. History likes endings that are clean: a battle won, a rebellion crushed, a leader captured. But this story refuses that comfort, because the town built by the 250 did not end in flames. It ended in something far more dangerous to power. It endured, and then it vanished by choice. For years, the free town lived between rumors. Slave catchers spoke of ghosts. Hunters told stories of drums heard at night, then silence. Plantation owners dismissed it as fantasy. But the world kept expanding. Roads cut deeper into forests. Settlers pushed into swamps. Surveyors mapped land that was never meant to be mapped. Freedom has enemies even when it is quiet, and the elders of the town knew something crucial. What saved them once, being forgotten, would not save them forever. A meeting was called, not in secret, not in whispers. Every adult attended. Men who had fled chains, women who had delivered children in silence, young people who had never been enslaved but knew the stories. The question was simple: do we stay or do we scatter? To stay meant fortifying, building defenses, possibly fighting. To leave meant abandoning homes built with free hands. And there was no right answer, only survival. One elder stood and said, "Slavery taught us what happens when power finds you." Silence followed. Then another voice spoke. "We did not escape to become a target." The decision was not unanimous, but it was accepted. What happened next was never recorded, because no one was there to write it down. The town dismantled itself. Homes were taken apart, paths erased, crops burned, not in panic, but precision. Knowledge was divided. Some would head north, some would melt into free black communities, some would disappear into native lands, some would never settle again. Children were taught new names. Stories were broken into pieces so no one person could betray the whole truth. And one night, the town emptied itself again. Historians search for documents, but this story avoided paper on purpose, because paper can be seized, burned, edited. What survived was oral memory, whispers passed through families, stories told without dates, songs without explanations. That is why history books say possible maroon settlement, unconfirmed reports, legend, because confirmation would mean admitting something unbearable, that enslaved people did not just flee, they organized, governed, defended, and chose their fate. Slave owners feared revolts, they feared weapons, but what truly terrified them was this: a successful alternative, a living example that said, "We do not need you." That fear is why patrols were relentless, why rumors were crushed, why silence was encouraged. Because if others learned the truth, they would walk away too. Nothing stands where the town once lived. No plaques, no markers, no ruins. Just forest, just water, just land that seems untouched. But land remembers. It remembers feet that did not drag, hands that built without orders, children who laughed without permission. Freedom leaves no monuments, only echoes. The 250 did not disappear, they multiplied. Into families, into names changed to survive, into communities that carried something unspoken. And maybe, just maybe, Someone watching this now carries that blood. A freedom chosen at sunrise, an hour that rewrote destiny. So when history tells you freedom was given, remember this story. 250 people did not wait. They did not ask. They did not fight with fire or steel. They simply stood up and walked away. And in doing so, they proved something no system of oppression can survive forever. Power ends the moment people decide it does.